Was it a family curse that caused the unthinkable tragedy that happened to this beautiful family, or the unshakable desire to fulfill addiction which perpetuated crimes and led to neglect in a continuous downward spiral? Deadly Deep Dives. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel for another video if you've been here before, and if not, hello, I am Kimbyrleigha, nice to meet you. This is actually part 2 of this story. If you want all the details, you should watch part 1. However, you want to skip it, completely fine with me. You can do so and just pick up right here. These deep dives are all about going deep into the lives of the victims and everybody involved so that you can make a better determination of how you feel about the outcome. Only scratching the surface of some of these cases doesn't give us the opportunity to look at the possible real reasons that some of these happened instead of looking at the sensationalized quick clips or news about these horrific events. So that is what I'm going to be doing today as well, ending out the first half with this second half. My last video has a lot more detail. I had to take things out of this video. I had to take out words. I had to take out things that I really wanted to talk about because YouTube alerted me that my last video was not appropriate for the typical ads and compensation. I fought with YouTube about this because I think that it is censorship in some way. Advertisers don't watch my video. It's just flagged that it's inappropriate. Nevertheless, that is why I have a sponsor for today's video. I really appreciate the ones that are brave enough to take a chance on some more controversial topics, according to YouTube. Funny enough, one of you told me that you don't mind sponsorships as long as they're authentic, which I agree with. You followed that up with saying, as long as you don't do an ad for like a VPN. And it made me think, why not? That's actually how I connected with today's sponsor, NordVPN. And I had never used one and didn't really know what they were at the time. A VPN is a virtual private network. One of the reasons it's a great idea to have a VPN is what we were just talking about, internet censorship. NordVPN is great if you want to access news, movies, TV shows, and other sites that your country could be restricting. It just takes one click. You open the map, click on the location, and you'll be connected in seconds. It's that easy. It makes sense because if you live in a certain country, like let's say the US, you're getting the local search results. If you travel somewhere else, like France or Italy with your computer or your phone, you're going to get that country's search results. I want to vary my content. I want to do cases from other countries. And if I want to research those, NordVPN is perfect for me. And that's what I've learned now. It opens up a world of possibilities. Plus, it does give you the privacy while unblocking that content that you're not really supposed to be accessing. Not even your internet provider will know. So all you have to do to take advantage of today's offer from NordVPN is go to my link in the description box. I tried the code. It is working. The code is my name, Kimbyrleigha. I know it's hard to spell, so just copy and paste that. With my code, you will get a 2-year plan at a 73% discount, plus you'll get 1 month free. That's a really good deal. So when you're thinking about getting a VPN, if you are, just remember that NordVPN took a chance on sponsoring me and this video to make it possible for you. Thank you so very much. Let's get into the video. As a matter of fact, Sarah called 911 a few months after starting to smoke spice. She and Jamie were having some kind of bad reaction, and paramedic Devin Taylor came out to Jamie and Sarah's place to check on them. He took their vital signs. He made sure they were okay. And then he just went on his way. Sarah was warned of the dangers and not to have it around her children, but that did not stop her. The next 3 years were some of the worst for this family, as though they hadn't been through enough already. In 2011, while Sarah was living with Jamie, Don took her to court, claiming that she was taking child support payments she wasn't supposed to because he had been watching her son Jonathan. Don said he was supposed to be getting those payments. Surprisingly, the judge sided with Don on this one. Sarah was ordered to pay him $6,578 in back payments. So you could see how much she was getting from these support payments. That's a lot of money. I just wonder how many months that was. But that's a lot. So now she's supposed to be paying Don $100 a month to clear this up. I was thinking, how was she supposed to get this money? I guess she could give him any other support payments that she was getting that were coming in, but then how would she fund her addiction? Interestingly, by the way, anytime the children were at Dawn's or Christine's, their paternal grandparents' homes, wherever they were. The public assistance payments, they wouldn't be made out to Sarah anymore. They would be made out to whoever the children were with at the time. So some have argued that the children were tossed around and taken in by certain family members because those family members wanted the money and not necessarily out of the kindness of their hearts. January 21st, 2012, there was a call to the DCF. But when they went out to screen the family, they didn't find anything that would warrant further investigation, so they just dropped the case. There must have been something going on because a month later, on February 28th, the DCF was back at Jamie and Sarah's. Caleb had sliced open his foot on a piece of glass. No idea how this happened or where, but he was sent to school like that without any treatment being done by his parents. When his teacher noticed how deep this cut was, she immediately sent him to the school nurse. The nurse was pretty shocked, and so she phoned Sarah right away and told her, "You need to get him looked at by a doctor, like now." Instead, when Caleb comes home from school, she doesn't take him to the doctor. She dunks his foot in a tub of bleach, puts toilet paper around his wound, and duct taped it. I know how bad hydrogen peroxide is, but bleach? Caleb comes to school once again, and the nurse doesn't know what to do. So she calls the school resource officer. His name is David Adderholt, and he decides to bring Caleb to the doctor. The doctor provides Adderholt with all the instructions on how to clean the wound, and he relays all of this to Sarah, but instead of doing what she was supposed to do to help him, she was back on drugs and not paying any attention to any of the children. Because Sarah wasn't supervising the children, they end up leaving the residence and were picked up by neighbors. The neighbors brought them straight to the police station, and you'd think someone's going to get arrested or charged. No charges brought against them. They just got the children and brought them right back. This time, though, the pure lack of follow-through on cleaning and caring for a wound on Caleb's foot, which was now showing signs of infection at that point, pushed the DCF caseworkers to finally threaten legal action against her if she didn't start being more responsible. But you see, threats are not actions, mostly because instead of removing the children, they would believe Sarah's promises. Just allowed her to refuse services again and again, and they did not provide any supervision to protect these children. For the next 8 months, the PSF and the DCF provided the family with in-house services once again, hoping that they could educate and assist Sarah to become a better caregiver. She would engage in the services here and there, but the case finally closed, once again another one closing in September of 2012 when Sarah refused help once again. She explained that the drugs were not the problem, it was her epilepsy. She wasn't herself lately, according to her, because she had had seizures and was suffering from stress and anxiety attacks. Still, she refused to get help, and there were no medical records indicating she had epilepsy. It was most likely the spice that was making her feel that way. She also told caseworkers that she was in and out of hospitals due to only having one kidney, and that she suffered from chronic pain because of what she called a birth defect. In addition to that, she had self-reported that she was diagnosed with pelvic inflammatory disease. Again, nothing on her medical records could be found, not even any mental health records. Chances are she never went to get help. She probably didn't think she needed help, considering she keeps refusing help. Oddly, when I'm reading these DCF reports, and I might be reading them wrong, but recall, there were witnesses to the wound on Caleb's foot: a doctor, a school nurse, the school resource officer, teachers. Yet the DCF report states their finding as follows: not substantiated findings of medical neglect to Caleb, and no indications of inadequate supervision to Caleb, Kylie, Jonathan, Destiny, and Brandon. Really? Are they investigating the right family? The final report regarding Caleb's foot read, "Needs are being seen to with the help of others." What others? The teacher and the resource officer? Is it their responsibility? Or was it Dawn? Because in that case, it's like the helpless being led by the clueless. As they would say, the inmates are running the asylum. Neighbors knew, paramedics knew, school counselors knew, school resource officers knew, yet no one is doing a thing about it. They're just hoping for the best with minimal voluntary services. It wasn't long before the DCF was back, just a few months later in January 2013, when Brandon fractured his arm. While he's being examined at the hospital, the x-rays showed Brandon's arm had already been fractured once before, and it wasn't done healing yet. This was a compound fracture, a second fracture to the same arm. I think I could probably guess why his arm was broken, but I'll let you decide what you think happened. Sarah and Jamie were questioned about what happened to Brandon regarding both of the fractures, and their stories were not consistent with the damage. They blamed it on Don. He was the one outside with Brandon when his arm was injured. A child protection team medical director was now on the case. And because Don was blamed, they recommended, there's that word, recommended, can you guess? Voluntary in-home services. No arrests, no removal of the children. What is this? We're not just dealing with a broken arm. We are dealing with a broken system. There's no doubt. Sarah did the same thing that she's always done. She minimally participated in the assistance programs. She kept abusing drugs. And this resulted in yet another call to DCF in May of 2013. And this was from Jamie's grandmother. So the children's great-grandmother is now calling into the DCF. She tells them that both Destiny and Brandon's teeth are falling out, that they're completely rotten. There was a child protection team from University of Florida on the case this time, advising the DCF on what steps they need to take. They were involved because Christine had now called authorities to try to protect her grandchildren. She told one of the deputies, Don is bipolar, he's not taking his meds, and he's abusing spice. They came in, they conducted forensic interviews on all the children, everyone. Several of the children expressed fear of Don. When Sarah was interviewed, she told them she had seen guns in the home that belonged to Don. As a convicted felon, he was once again in possession of guns that he wasn't allowed to have. The kids said that Jamie would completely wreck the house looking for K2. If he couldn't find it, he would just turn everything over in the entire house. And this was sad. The kids also said, Mom and Dad are drug addicts. I mean, for them to even know and understand and realize that that's what's going on with their parents, it hurt. In the final report, the University of Florida CPT recommended, and there's that word again, recommended that Don have no unsupervised contact with his grandchildren, and that Sarah should take classes to become a better parent. They also interviewed people at the school, and they found out that Kylie was really struggling considering she had to be held back due to the chronic lice infestations. The school was diligently working with Caleb, Kylie, and Jonathan one-on-one to address the gaps in their academic progress because of the excessive amount of absences. I know here in California, if my daughter misses more than 30 minutes of instruction without an excuse 3 times during the entire school year, she would be classified as truant. If it continued to happen, they will send you to a student attendance review board or county probation department. I'm saying all that because I'm shocked that all of this is going on. All this apparent and obvious eyewitness evidence right in front of these caseworkers' faces, and yet the children have to endure all of the suffering. But that would be over soon, and not for good reason. The agency administrators had a meeting to decide whether to remove Sarah's children or to force her to accept supervision and help from the state. The conclusion in the report read, quote, "It was determined there was no reason to seek judicial intervention for compulsory services or ultimately removal from the mother's care because the children were not in imminent danger." This makes me so angry. So angry. In July, just 2 months later, Sarah had failed the Better Parenting program. Ironically, she was about to become a parent for the 6th time. That's right. In September 2013, Sarah found out she was pregnant with her 6th child. By the next month in November, Jamie was in court on a theft charge for attempting to pawn stolen property. He was put on probation until his sentencing hearing, which would be sometime the next year. Her and Jamie must have been so desperate because Sarah gets caught stealing a vehicle. She's convicted of grand theft And she is also put on 18 months of probation. Just probation with the criminal record that she has. Do these agencies talk to one another? Do they even share these reports? And now we have Sarah and Jamie once again using drugs while they're on probation. The day before Valentine's Day, February 13th, 2013, again, another child with a burn. The school nurse notified DCF. She explained the burn would have been much better if it had been treated the night before. I think Sarah just wanted to be alone to do her own thing, so she would attempt to get Destiny to go to bed even if she wasn't tired. Yet the DCF report stated, not substantiated findings of inadequate supervision. Therefore, no ongoing services were needed. Not needed? I'll tell you what I believe is not needed. All of these people and agencies coming in and out of the spirits' lives who did not do any good. It's unnecessary to keep sending all these people who aren't thoroughly putting the pieces together, who can't even see through the fake smiles and artificial charm, and who were themselves negligent and have failed these children. Who is supposed to protect these kids from their own parents? Whose responsibility is it? I was thinking that. Those were the questions that kept me from finishing this research. I just kept thinking, when a children's caregiver can't be trusted, who's supposed to step in? The grandparents? What if those people can't help? Then who? The state? And then if it is the state, who are the individuals who have been hired for such a huge responsibility? They're making decisions that can mean life or death. Well, we find out that they weren't the right people in this case. Not at all. Dropping the ball is an understatement. You can tell me at the end why you think the DCF and the PSF failed here, but let's move on. I feel like a literal broken record because no other case I've ever done includes this much neglect from so many people. But once again, an incident report in June of 2013 shows the presence of drugs and guns within the home, including filthy living conditions. Let's look at this graphic together. They get a call. That's the first step. And to their credit, it seems the teachers, who hardly get enough recognition for the jobs that they do, were the only ones besides the neighbors, who probably only called in out of annoyance, that would go out of their way to call and make these reports to the DCF. And I'm thinking, why aren't they calling the police? This graphic here says, Florida Child Welfare System, a roadmap to protecting our most vulnerable. Well, it might be a roadmap, but to me it seems like a damn dead end. A phone call, then investigation to determine whether these allegations are verified. And I would love to see what standard the caseworkers were using at this time to decide whether the allegations were not substantiated or that there were no indications of harm. Those are the two conclusions that don't warrant support. And if you don't pass go, none of the other options around this bend in the roadmap even get triggered. A court case was never opened. The furthest Sarah's cases ever got were to the protective supervision. And there were only 2 or 3 that even reached that far. Though right here, these 2 words, safe or unsafe, why is that determined after a court case is opened? It seems backwards. Sarah failed a number of times, so why was there no case plan put into action? No safe harbor, no foster homes, nothing. Again, they closed the case. Sorry, not sorry that I'm explaining all this because it matters. This is the children's story. This is giving them a voice. And those happy cartoon children upset me when I'm looking at this graphic, honestly. But then again, something really bothered me and confused me because I'm a very observant person. I'm very detail oriented. I've even read enough cases to spot issues, or so I thought, because I was looking at these photos and to me, it's true. The children look happy. They look like they're dressed in nice outfits. Caleb played baseball on a team. He obviously had to make it to the practice, make it to the games. That's a big responsibility. Kylie wore beautiful dresses to church. Sarah took cute pictures with her kids. They're in car seats, which obviously means someone was being responsible because that's the best thing to do. They went on trips to carnivals, riding carousels, on a trip to the beach at night. I think Sarah loved her kids. I believe that there was definitely love in her heart, but not in her actions. Who was taking Caleb to baseball, buying the children nice clothes? Who was doing that? Because from the outside looking in, they look like they're living a pretty normal life. One of Sarah's friends said She had a good heart, but was always struggling to keep her life and her children's lives in one piece. She had no job. She couldn't work with all them kids. Every time I turn around, something bad was happening to her. I see what her friend is saying. Sarah lost everyone. Her brother Kyle, at a young age, her dad went to prison. Her brother Josh was locked up, and soon both of her children's fathers would be too. When the DCF said the kids were getting care from others, I have to assume it was Christine or the other grandparents. The pictures of Sarah smiling with her kids, it gives me the she's a good mom vibe. Even I'm not seeing the signs. But I wasn't standing in her home knowing all the calls with the allegations supporting them. What has to go on in a home in Florida? Is it death? I guess so. And how many deaths? Sadly, we are about to find out. We're getting closer and closer to the end. Jamie hasn't been sentenced yet. It's now July 24th, 2014, just a month ago. On June 22nd, Sarah gave birth to her sixth child, Alana. They now have 6 children under the age of 12. 4 of the children are attending Bell Elementary School. When they're at school, it's probably the only time they're treated like human beings. The only place they're truly safe around people who actually care about them. School. Their safe haven. It's a wonder they even made it to school with 2 parents with driver's licenses that are suspended, and obviously without a vehicle since we know Sarah tried to steal one. Luckily, they did take the bus. I don't even know how they got to the bus stop in the mornings, but maybe Sarah was still up from the night before doing spice. It is crazy how much people can hide. As they say, you never know what's going on behind closed doors. Unfortunately, the children didn't have their safe haven because they were not in school in July. They were out on summer break with no one to supervise them. The DCF gets a call that all 6 children, including the newborn, were left alone, unsupervised, in Jamie and Sarah's dilapidated shack on his family's property. And where were Jamie and Sarah? They were out looking for more K2. They were now using it on a daily basis. 5-year-old Destiny was reportedly injured while home alone, and one of the kids ran to a neighbor's house to ask for help. The neighbor got a hold of the family member who, according to them, called the DCF. Sarah had been using spice for years, but now it was much more than a recreational drug. It was like a food. It was a necessity. The way she would feel when she was coming off of it was just too much to handle. People who knew the family said that Sarah acted like the children weren't even there. If she needed to go somewhere and leave the house, she wouldn't even make plans for anyone to care for the children. She would just walk out the door. Caleb was 11 at the time, so I'm sure he took on a lot of the responsibility for his younger siblings, especially his precious newborn sister, Alana. Sarah was arrested August 26th for violating her probation. Earlier, she had actually stolen $400 from a friend's wallet. Then her probation officer went to go give her a drug test, and she failed it. There's a probationary period until sentencing, so she's released. This report was closed 2 days later on August 28th. One of the investigators, Shelley McDarris, made a final conclusion that the allegations were unfounded. They were just a false report made by that family member because they had a fight with Sarah. According to Sarah, they were just trying to retaliate against her. And Shelley signed off that all the children's needs were being met. The report further went on to state, and you can read it here for yourself, no indicators of inadequate supervision. How would you know? If the children are there when you come over, how is that evidence that they weren't alone earlier? It says no indicators of substance misuse. Again, how do you know? If you're not there when it's happening, how do you know? No misuse of illicit drugs, no indicators of physical injury to Destiny. Maybe there weren't any outward signs of injury, but what about mental abuse, psychological, verbal? Do those count? Because I think they should. However, another DCF investigator, Sandra Hodge, she tried to explain in her report that this was not a false report. Sarah had admitted to using K2 a couple weeks ago, back in July during the case that had just closed. Remember a year before, she also admitted to it. She said, "Oh, it's not the drugs, it's my medical issues." So they knew. But investigator Hodge went on to note that when she observed the children, they were well-groomed, dressed appropriately for school, and excited to get off the bus and be home with their mom. But luckily, the children were back in school in August when all of this was going on, so at the very least, they got away from these parents during the week. But they were about to get away from Jamie for good. He was finally sentenced in August. This may seem like a good thing, but it's not. It left Sarah with no help. Not that Jamie was that much help, but it was 2 extra hands at least, and now she has no job, no place to stay, and 6 children. She was again knocking on the doors of neighbors' homes, asking for diapers and food for Alana. Of course, the cycle begins once again. The neighbors call the DCF, and yet another case is opened on September 1st, and sadly, this would be the last case. But not for any good reasons. By that time, Sarah was back at Don's. She was forced to move back in with him, the man that the University of Florida Child Protection Team recommended the children not have any unsupervised contact with. Not only was Sarah and the 6 kids living at Don's in his single wide trailer, Colleen's daughter Katie was living there too, and guess what? Katie was only 17 and she had a child of her own that was living there as well. Her name was Sophia. She was just under 2 years old, born in March 2013. There were 9 people that we know of living in this small trailer, and Colleen would be over all the time as well. I'm going to be showing a single wide trailer, but I don't know if you've ever seen one or been in one. My fiance was raised in a double wide. His parents still live in it, and I think that's small, but a single wide with only 2 dedicated bedrooms. To me, there is no wonder so much violence was going on. It's hard living in such close quarters, especially for a group of unstable people. The call on September 1st came after a family member reported that Sarah and Don were smoking K2 in front of the children and leaving them unattended. Big surprise. How many reports do you think there had been? By this time, there had been over 18 investigated incidents involving the DCF. 18. 12 years of reports just involving Sarah and her kids, not including all the years that Dawn was the alleged perpetrator in other child welfare incidents. September 2nd, the Gilchrist County Sheriff's Office did a welfare check at Dawn's home and concluded the children were not in danger. Their police report indicated that they were very familiar with the Spirit family, which may have affected the way these cases were handled. The fact that the family was well known to everyone, from the residents to law enforcement, the school system, DCF, PSF, they may have seen this family's reports as the boy who cried wolf. Like people were just calling in and there really was nothing wrong, or was the same old thing. So much so that they would merely check off a box that it was just another false alarm. No one had died yet, right? So what's there to worry about? Past precedent shows that nothing major has ever happened. So why would you assume it would, right? Wrong again. The agencies thought they knew and understood the family dynamics at play. Essentially, these caseworkers became conditioned to the pattern, so much so they thought they could predict the future. As if convicted felons on drugs are predictable. Sarah told the DCF investigators she had been released from jail after violating her probation and testing positive for illegal substances. She tells them that. The case was open and still being investigated when tragedy struck just 2 weeks later. Don seemed to be on edge. He was much angrier than usual. This may have been a result of the spice. He was stressed out over money. Everyone was staying in his trailer. He didn't get along with Colleen. Don most likely resented Colleen's nephew, Jamie, who never truly stepped up for his kids. Don probably thought that Jamie should have been doing more, but that's the pot calling the kettle black. You're about to find out just how much he hated the Stewart family. Maybe he blamed Jamie for getting Sarah hooked on K2 and then in turn hating the fact that he was now smoking it too. We will never know the thoughts that were going on in Don's head. What we do know is he's getting upset over phone calls that are coming into his cell phone. Sarah didn't have a phone of her own, so she was using Don's. He was getting texts from people as well as answering phone calls. We also know that Katie decided to move out of the trailer just a week before the tragedy that occurred on Thursday, September 18th. Katie couldn't take it anymore. There were a variety of factors, but what pushed her over the edge was Dawn's escalating anger. She told people that Dawn was yelling and cussing way too much. He was also off his medication. That's when it seemed like he started becoming enraged. He said he wasn't going to be taking his medicine anymore because it wasn't helping him, and it never had. It's really common for individuals struggling with disorders to believe they're better off without their medication. When they're on the medication, they feel balanced, or they're balanced without knowing it. So this gives them a false sense of reality of what it would be like if they were off their meds. He said, quote, "The medicine, I've tried it. It ain't working. The one medicine I have is my family." I guess that medication didn't work for Dawn either. One of the issues causing Dawn to become angry was that as soon as Colleen came back into the picture, Sarah began making even worse choices, one of which was to start providing men with sexual favors in exchange for money. Dawn believed this was Colleen's idea. Since we only know what Dawn said, we have no choice but to believe it. And it is safe to assume he knew more than we did. Calls started coming in, either requesting sex or from the man that was helping Sarah get jobs. His name was Jose, and Colleen had introduced him to Sarah. A lot of times, women who will recruit other women into these sex trades, they get a cut of the money as well. Or at least they get a lump sum for bringing in another woman, and that might have been what was going on here. Either way, Dawn believed Colleen was turning Sarah into a whore. His words. Sarah owed her dad money. She was ordered to pay him $100 a month. Plus, I'm sure she needed money for her K2 as well as other necessities. In order to get that money, she started selling her body. All we know about Jose is that he was a Hispanic man from Trenton, Florida. Sarah had only known him for a couple days. On Tuesday, September 16th, Jose actually shows up at Dawn's trailer to pick up Sarah. I'm sure Dawn was there. He didn't work. He was probably helping Sarah watch the kids, or Sarah could have left all the kids alone. And then maybe Dawn came home and discovered that. We don't know, but Dawn knew what Sarah was doing because of the phone. That time, Sarah only came home with $25. The next day, on Wednesday, September 17th, Colleen was over Dawn's the entire day. She said that Dawn was livid, and at one point, Colleen heard him telling Sarah that, quote, "Your kids aren't worth a shit. Tell someone to come get them because I don't love them. I hate them." Just a short time later, Dawn apologized to Sarah for making those comments. He said he was just really stressed. Again, Jose reached out, and this time, on the second occasion, Sarah told him to meet her at the dollar store in Bell, probably because she knew Dawn was going to freak out. When Sarah came back, she had $70 this time. No one knows what went on the rest of the night, what conversations, arguments, words were exchanged. But what we know is that all four of Sarah's older children, Caleb, Kylie, Destiny, and Jonathan, got on the bus and made it to Bell Elementary School on Thursday morning. We can assume that Sarah was most likely at home that day with Dawn and the two younger kids, Brandon and Alana. The older kids were set to get off the bus just after 3 p.m. and the school is only about 7 minutes from Dawn's. Caleb was old enough to walk them to and from the bus stop to the trailer. No one would come and get them off the bus or be waiting for them when they returned from school. Although sometimes Dawn would stand outside the house and yell at the kids in the morning as they were walking to the bus, and neighbors heard this a number of times. They even described him as hating his grandchildren. That Thursday, September 18th, was different. Dawn was waiting for the kids at the bus stop. When they saw him, they were afraid to get off. Dawn was known to take bike rides along his street as well as through town. The whole family had suspended licenses, so he rode his bike everywhere he went. That day, around 3:30 p.m., a neighbor named Tate Bryant that lived at 2870 Northwest 29th Terrace was home all day. He saw Dawn walking down the street, which seemed unusual since he only saw Dawn ride his bike and never walking. He walked up and down the street 3 times as though he was looking for someone or something. He could tell that Dawn's body was tensed up. His body language gave off the impression that he was really angry. Bryant didn't observe anything else. I'm going to show you here on this map Don's trailer is the smaller circle and Mr. Bryant lives at the bigger one. It's about a 6-minute walk. I looked up the school bus route. The bus would stop at the end of 29th Terrace at Northwest 30th Street. A neighbor named Victoria Edwards, who we're going to hear from in just a moment because I'm going to play something that she said, who lives at 2759 Northwest 29th Terrace, said she saw Don walking to the end of 29th Terrace toward 30th Street to pick the kids up from the bus stop. She echoed what the other neighbor said. She had never seen Don walk the kids back from the bus stop. It takes approximately 9 minutes to walk from the bus stop to Don's trailer. So putting the timeline together, I'm going to assume Don walked the kids inside, then came back out and was walking down the road, seemingly looking for someone or something. Now, this is my theory. I think he was looking for Jose. The last 2 days, Sarah had gone somewhere with Jose. He even came to the trailer to pick Sarah up, and Don was not happy about it. I think Don wanted to have some words with Jose and scare him away because he knew Sarah did not have the willpower to stop. She was going to continue since she was so desperate, and this was quick and easy money. Don may have thought if Jose knew that Don could possibly hurt him or even kill him, because Don does have guns, according to Sarah, Jose would back off. I think he had his gun on him. Again, this is my theory, but I'm considering this because of how fast things escalate when he gets home. I'm assuming he was armed, expecting to come into contact with Jose. The reason I say this is because neighbors Betty and Billy Dyer, who lived at 2720 Northwest 29th Terrace, were coming back home around 3:45 from picking up their granddaughter at school. This timeline matches up with Mr. Bryant's. The couple and their granddaughter were driving south on the roadway and saw a dark-skinned male in his 30s walking down Northwest 29th Terrace, the road in front of Don's trailer. He was just past the neighbor's residence to the north, so he was walking towards Don's. You can see on the map here, the top circle is the Dyers and the bottom one is Don's. But get this, they described him as Hispanic with dark, medium-length, wavy hair and a thin mustache. He had a medium build and he was fit. So we know this isn't Don. That's not Don's body type. Plus, all the neighbors knew Don. This wasn't Don. The Dyers did not know who this person was. He was not a familiar face. As they looked his way, he was staring back at them in a weird way. As they drove by, he actually continued to stare at them, just looking back at them as they drove. I think Don saw a text or got a call from Jose, and he knew that Jose was on his way. Who knows? Maybe he actually made contact with Jose. We don't know. But what we do know for sure is that by 4 p.m., Don was on the phone with a 911 operator. Listener discretion is advised right now. This is going to be hard for some of you to hear. I'm going to play it, but if you need to skip this, please pause. Look for the timestamp in the description. Okay, here we go.
Gilchrist County 911, what's the address of the emergency?
Yes, ma'am. I just shot my daughter and shot all my grandkids, and I'll be sitting on my step, and then when you get here, I'm going to shoot myself.
What is the address that you're at, sir?
2550 Northwest, 25 Terrace, donspirit. Every one of them are dead.
You said your name is donspirit?
Yep.
All right, Don, what kind of gun do you have?
It doesn't matter what kind of gun I got. They're all dead, and then when you get here, I'll shoot myself, and then you figure out what kind of gun it is.
How long ago this happened, Don?
I don't want to hear it, man. I'm done with every fucking thing. Just bring the motherfuckers out here, that's all. You got all the kids are dead in the house.
Okay, how many people? Okay, how many people?
6 kids, 1 adult.
6 kids and 1 adult?
Yeah. One of them is a baby.
All right, Don. Is there any way you can stay on the phone with me till I get somebody there to help you?
What's that?
Can I have you stay on the phone with me?
No, not that. I'm waiting for them to get here. When they get here, I'm going to shoot myself on my back step. All I'm doing is waiting for them.
So you're sitting on your back steps?
Yep.
Okay, Dawn.
Wait, before you leave or think everything is over, stay. I'm going to walk you through this crime scene. Everything I have is from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement investigative reports.
And right now, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement investigators are combing through the scene looking for clues as to the sequence of events that led up to this murder.
The sheriff says a deputy arrived after donspirit called emergency services to say he might harm himself and others.
To me, I actually truly think he wanted police to come as quickly as possible so that his family's bodies were not found by someone that cared about him or left there to rot. And you might disagree with me, that's okay. But I think he did care about his family in some sick way. He just wasn't right in the head. Remember Resource Officer David Adderholt, who took Caleb to the doctor for his foot? Well, sadly, he was the very first person on the scene. Adderholt was near the school when he heard dispatch send a call out. It was a call regarding a person who killed 6 kids and his daughter and would kill himself. Adderholt said he was so familiar with Dawn and the family and the residents that he just knew. So he rushed over, parked his car on the road outside the trailer, and he could see Dawn walking near the back portion of the trailer, which is where the entryway was. The front door was broken and it was permanently sealed. Dawn was just pacing back and forth, and it didn't look like there were any weapons on him at the time. Adderholt called out to Dawn by name over his patrol car speaker and identified himself. He told Dawn to please show him his hands, and Dawn complied. He put his hands up. Dawn was cursing. He was telling the officer he wasn't going to hurt him. And Adderholt wasn't scared of Dawn at that point, at least not enough to stay covered, because he came out from behind his cruiser so that Dawn could see him. He wanted to show him he was someone Dawn knew. After all, this was the officer who took care of his own grandchild a number of times. While Adderholt was speaking with Dawn, K-9 Deputy Scott Douglas arrives on the scene with lights and sirens. He parks behind Adderholt, pulls out his AR, and meets him behind the patrol car for cover. Douglas also knew Dawn, and he listened while Adderholt was trying to convince Dawn to come talk to them. Dawn began walking closer to the vehicle, and Adderholt once again told him to show him his hands, which he did. Then Dawn said, "I'm not mad at you. This is significant, so listen." Dawn told Adderholt, "I am not mad at you. I'm mad at the Stewarts. Colleen Stewart has turned Sarah into a whore and drugs, and I'm fed up with this whole family, the Stewart family. They've ruined my family. They've ruined my life, and I'm tired of them all, and I've taken care of it today." It's a heavy statement, it's a really important one, and it's very telling. Once again, Adderholt asked Dawn to come to the roadside. Dawn just responds with, "I killed them all." And Adderholt says, "Who?" Dawn yells, "The kids inside. I killed the kids inside. They're in the trailer dead, and Sarah's dead too." Adderholt asked where Sarah was, and Dawn pointed to a tarp on the front lawn close by the driveway. And while he was pointing, he screamed something to the effect of, "She's under that right there, motherfucker." Douglas overheard Adderholt tell Dawn he didn't feel safe with Dawn near the truck. But Dawn insisted he wasn't there to harm them. He told them he was going to come down to the road. Adderholt asked Dawn where the weapon was. He said it was inside. Adderholt knew if that were true, then Dawn would have to make his way back to the back of the trailer to go get it. So he wanted to keep Dawn coming forward towards them. Both the officers saw Dawn starting to walk near the back of the trailer, but he stopped and he picked up a jug of water, then made his way back to the driveway near his white truck. At that point, when Adderholt attempted to talk to Dawn, he was way less responsive. Another officer was driving up at this time. They don't know if Dawn saw these additional officers and started getting scared, but the Gilchrist County Sheriff Deputy Brittany Lee was the third to respond on the scene. She parked behind the 2 other cars and made her way behind Douglas's cruiser with her medical kit, her AED, and a patrol rifle. She had Dawn right in her line of sight, but from where she was standing, She could only see him from the waist up, and it did not seem like he had a weapon in his hand. She reached down, she turns the safety off on her rifle, and she's ready to fire. Other officers arrived close to the time that Officer Lee arrived. It was Lieutenant Edwin Jenkins, Sergeant Stephen Stalvey, and Sheriff Robert Dale Schultz III. They were right next to Adderholt, trying to formulate a plan as Don walked to the back of his property. Stalvey positioned himself with his rifle ready along the fence line, and he had binoculars on and could see Don, but not a weapon. At this point, Officer Lee was about to raise her weapon and point it in Don's direction. This is when Adderholt watched Don as he walked back from behind the trailer, returned into view before Officer Lee could take aim, and before Adderholt could say anything to him, a gunshot rang out. There was no echo, it was just a thud. Adderholt shouted that Don had shot himself. Adderholt radios to dispatch that Don had shot himself and that they needed medical units right away. Sergeant Stephen Stalvey, Lieutenant Jenkins, Lieutenant Jeff Manning, and Officer Douglas formed a line to make their way to the trailer and secure the scene. As he got closer, Deputy Douglas noticed Don was lying on the ground. A wooden-handled .45 caliber handgun was lying at his feet. Crime scene investigator Michelle Jones, now on the scene, is picking up the corner of the tarp next to the driveway, and she asks Adderholt to positively identify the body of Sarah Spirit. He looks underneath, and he verifies. After this, Adderholt turned around, and he left the scene. As close as he was to those children, I don't think he could have stomached walking into that crime scene. As they approached Don, Deputy Lee checked for a pulse but found none. He was 51 years old and pronounced dead. Deputy Douglas was the first to walk the crime scene. Right behind him was EMS worker Devin Taylor. Taylor was walking to the scene to check vitals, to render aid, or pronounce the victims deceased. Recall that Taylor was the EMT that came to Sarah and Jamie's place when they were high on spice and needed medical attention. The other officers on scene were also walking right behind them, and Special Agent Tony Watts had just joined them. When they opened the back door, the first victim they encountered was a little girl. I really wanted to go into more detail. As you know, I do like to go into detail about the autopsy reports, police reports, and the like. But unfortunately, I've had to censor that part of my video. So let's just say that during the course of me discussing what happened to each of these individuals, there were definitely outward things that were present on the scene after these injuries, which is disturbing for some people to hear about in detail. But that matter was all around in these instances. I wanted to talk about the directionality of each of these wounds, but unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to go into that detail. Just know that this was a very horrific crime scene. If you want to use your own imagination, and I'm sure you can come up with a mental picture. She was just inside the doorway. The little girl was identified as Kylie Marie Coleman, 9 years old. I'm sorry, but I can't help but think of my daughter who just turned 10. It's just heartbreaking. It really is. Taylor pronounced her dead, and they made their way down the hall. This is not Dawn's real trailer, but I found this floor plan, and I wanted to show it so that you can see what a trailer like this looked like, and also how they made their way through and where they found everyone. Only a few feet away, they found the body of a preteen boy. He was dressed in a short-sleeved shirt, shorts, and sneakers. He was pronounced dead and identified as Caleb Coleman, 11 years old. They made their way into the main portion of the trailer, which was the living area. The trailer was a mess. It was in complete disarray. Despite the usual mess, there were signs of a struggle. They could see into the kitchen since it was sort of all one room, and the refrigerator was lying on its side. It takes a lot of force to push over a refrigerator. Sergeant Stalvey made his way to the couch. It was obvious to them that she showed no signs of life. This was 10-week-old Alana Stewart. So sick and so heartbreaking. Special Agent Watts and Deputy Lee were leading the officers into the north bedroom. When they entered, they saw the body of a little girl on a futon. She was identified as Destiny Stewart, just 5 years old. Next to her at the foot of the futon was the body of a young boy, and Deputy Lee remarked that it appeared he was trying to hide. This poor boy was trying to hide in plain sight. because there was nowhere for him to go. He was identified as Brandon Stewart, only 4 years old. A sweet little baby boy. Why would anyone do that? Sergeant Salvi walked to the other end of the trailer and entered the south bedroom. Lying on the floor, right in the doorway, was the body of Jonathan Coleman, 8 years old. It was apparent to Sergeant Salvi, as well as all the other personnel on scene, that no one had survived their injuries. They exited the trailer and deemed it safe and secure for forensics to proceed. When Deputy Lee exited, she was asked by Lieutenant Jenkins to check under the tarp and verify the identity and vitals of the victim. Lee removed the tarp, revealing Sarah's spirit lying on her stomach. Lee placed the tarp back over Sarah. As they made their way back to the patrol cars, I hate this part. As they made their way back to the patrol cars, Special Agent Watts and Sheriff Schultz saw Sarah's mother, Christine. She was outside on the roadway in front of the trailer. At that time, they had the unbelievably difficult task of informing her about the death of an entire family. I actually can't imagine. I was trying to imagine it. I don't want to imagine it. But the horror and sadness and disbelief and emotional wreck that Christine must have been in. And police said because of her emotional state, she could not give them much information. All she could say was that Don was bipolar, and to her knowledge, he was using illegal narcotics. She hadn't spoken to Sarah since last week, but knew that Sarah was living with Don just until she could save enough money to rent a place of her own. I have so many mixed emotions, and when I read this, my heart ached for Christine, but it also ached for Sarah. Those last moments knowing full well you are never going to see your babies again. It wasn't a quick death, and I'll tell you why in just a moment, because I have the autopsy reports. As much as I want to hate Sarah, I still want to cry for her. Just reading the part about Christine saying that she knew Sarah was just trying to save money so she could rent her own place, it just hurt. And maybe she was just working for drugs, but a part of me truly does believe that she was hoping that somehow she could pull herself out of this mess. When this small town heard about what happened, you could have guessed. It tore the residents apart.
We received a call around 4 o'clock this afternoon. I haven't handled something like this at all. And to say that this county, this community, was not going to be devastated from this, from a small county, we're all family here. And we don't need to lose focus. This isn't about the gentleman that did this. This is certainly about the poor children and memory of them. The poor children tomorrow morning when they go to school, how devastating is that going to be for them?
Grief counselors were sent to Bell Elementary and surrounding schools, and the next night on Friday, the victims were honored. They had a balloon release by the captains from Bell and Trenton High School before their big football game. The fans were asked to wear white in solidarity. A woman named Danielle Berry said that she grew up in Bell and went home early from work so she could wear something white and go show her support. She said, "Never live for tomorrow because tomorrow isn't promised." A friend of Sarah's named Casey Hart was saddened by the loss and wanted everyone to know that Sarah was a busy mom who loved to laugh and watch comedies. She went on to say that Sarah's poor mother, Christine, had lost her youngest son, her oldest daughter, and all of her grandchildren. And I found a picture because I like to look and know what these people look like. Like, we see all the children, but I didn't know what Christine looked like. And I searched forever, and I found her Facebook. And this is her with all of her grandbabies before the tragedy. You can tell she just loved them so much. I mean, who wouldn't? They're adorable. They're innocent kids. It's even hard for these grown men to talk about. Lieutenant Jeff Manning had a hard time containing his sadness during the second press conference that night.
I'm not real sure how you get clear signs that something like this could have happened. I mean, you know, and... It's a difficult scene, okay? That's all I'll say.
Also wanted you to hear from some of the residents and what they had to say.
Neighbors in the rural area near Gainesville say they're devastated.
I think it's totally unnecessary. I mean, the kids didn't deserve this at all.
I was hoping nothing like this would happen.
I think everybody just needs to come together and, you know, and start looking out for each other. Maybe, you know, If they see somebody might needs help or something, maybe.
Remember I told you that Sarah didn't die a quick death? Well, her autopsy showed she was barefoot. She had blunt force trauma to the back of her head. She may have been pistol whipped. There was a laceration on her head, as well as 6 stab wounds to her midsection. Remember that Don had pushed Sarah against the refrigerator once before? We can assume he did this again after becoming enraged over Jose. He probably had that anger still inside him. Not able to let it out on Jose, he goes back inside, and he and Sarah most likely got into a fight. I just think things happened too fast. He comes inside, he immediately pushes her against the fridge. They fight, he grabs a knife, starts to stab her in the chest. She runs out the back door to go get help. She makes her way down to the front. And remember, her head, when she falls, is pointing towards the road. So you know she was probably running toward the road. And that's when he shot her. She fell where she stood. Then he realized what he had done. Now Sarah was gone. Did he really intend to kill all of them that day? I don't think so. I don't think he premeditated this. But I think it hit him in that moment when he realized he had just killed his daughter. Now all those kids would be left without a mother. He would be spending the rest of his life in prison or get death himself. The kids already had no fathers, and clearly Don hated the rest of the family. So he figured, I'm just going to end it. And he said he took care of it that day. Then I think he just turned back towards the door of the trailer. Kylie heard the commotion, probably went to go check on her mom. And as she came through that door, he shot her. And then he just made his way all around that home, shooting each and every child one by one. It's sick. It's absolutely sick.
When investigators left the home of the father of 3 of the murdered children, family members could be seen supporting each other, one wearing a jersey with a baseball number of 11-year-old Caleb Coleman, a 5th grader at Bell Elementary. The back read Caleb's Papa. State investigators believe Donald Spirit murdered his daughter Sarah Spirit and all of her kids before killing himself because of a family dispute. The first Gilchrist County deputy arrived and saw an unarmed Spirit pacing in his backyard. The report says he told the deputy a relative of his daughter's boyfriend got her into prostitution and drugs. Spirit then said, quote, I'm fed up with this whole family. They have ruined my life and I'm tired of them all. And I've taken care of it today.
I wanted to thank another content creator who gave me permission to use his video. So his channel is called Stories from the Grave. I'm going to put it up on the screen and I will leave a link in my description box. And I also want you to see the gravestones. It's so heartbreaking. Look at these gravestones. I've never seen anything like that, ever. And they're so beautifully done.
We had a lot of failures with local government agencies, the DCF, Department of Children and Family Services, a lot of failures going on in there. And there's no way that these kids should have ever been living anywhere near that monster. Former neighbors that have known or have lived next to him throughout the years in Bell and in Tampa, that he was just human filth. That's the mother Sarah with her brother Kyle. A 3-month-old baby right there, Alana. 3 months old.
There are so many people that conclude that these murders happened just because Don was angry at Colleen. And that bothers me. Without knowing the whole story, that's just a part of what led up to these horrific deaths. But mostly creating videos for shock value emphasizing that 911 call. But I kept thinking, how could a 1 to 3 minute video possibly even scrape the surface of this crime? To place all the blame on Colleen doesn't seem fair. It's no wonder she has multiple Facebook pages. She's probably trying to protect herself from the onslaught of hatred. Sarah had a choice. Don had a choice. Don killed these kids. It's Don's fault. You might be wondering why fathers, or in this case, grandfathers, kill their families and themselves. David Wilson of Birmingham City University actually divided this logic that these people have into 4 types. The anomic, disappointed, self-righteous, or paranoid. The anomic killer sees his family as a status symbol. When his economic status collapses, he sees them as a burden because now he has nothing. The disappointed killer seeks to punish his family for not living up to the ideals of what a family should be in his perspective. The self-righteous killer destroys the family for revenge upon the mother. Finally, the paranoid killer. They kill their family because they imagine they're protecting them from something even worse. Which one do you think Don was? One last thing that I think you'll be happy to know is that the DCF did have to pay a settlement for their inaction with regard to these children. They actually conducted their own investigation first. They deployed this critical incident response team to decide the nature and efficacy of the DCF involvement. They wanted to be able to assess potential systemic issues within the local system of care. I read all of it. It was laughable in my point of view. Some of the worst parts seemed that they were trying to justify their inaction. It was statements like this: "There's no evidence to suggest that anyone at any time could have known that Don's spirit was capable of the premeditated and intentional massacre of his 6 grandchildren, his daughter, and then himself. There will never be one child who dies without DCF working to determine what changes can be made or processes improved to prevent further tragedy." Really? DCF administrators insisted that there was nothing in the 8-year history with the Spirit family that could have predicted this outcome. Oh, and this one was even worse. They show a chart that depicted only 4 deaths between 2009 and 2013. However, the Miami Herald was doing their own private investigation for years. They dug through 6 years of DCF files and found hundreds of children who died from abuse or neglect and were working with the DCF. Sarah's children were added to the list of 534 children that had prior DCF history who will never get the chance to grow up. I purchased a subscription to the Miami Herald just to read all of the reports and watch all of the video testimony from the victims' families. It was heartbreaking, and I'll link it below in case you want to take a look. One of the articles included information about how the DCF was hiding deaths. 30 children's deaths, to be exact. They were just deleted from the system. Administrators were instructing caseworkers to delete incident reports. There were emails to prove this. Without going into any more detail than I already have, the DCF and 2 private companies connected to it agreed to pay $750,000 to settle the legal claims that arose from Don's killing spree. DCF paid $450,000, Partnership for Strong Families paid $250,000, and Devereaux paid $50,000. The money went to the victims' estates. Some may conclude something good came out of these deaths, that changes were made to legislation, that more children will be protected because of this. I don't see it like that. I can't. None of these children had to die to protect others. Others should have protected them so they didn't have to die. That's it. That's all I have for you today. I will see you in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already and you enjoy videos like this. Bye.